So, hi everyone, and thanks a lot for joining our SAP community call about scaling the digital transformation at SAP IT. We have Marc Gong, Senior Director for Agile and DevOps Competence Center from SAP IT Services. We also have on the line Minina Chao and myself, Moshe Nave, from the SAP community team who support hosting this call. Just a couple of comments that will help you benefit the most out of this call. In case you want to ask a question, you have the raise hand functionality, and then once I see, I will allow you to speak, and then you can ask your question, and we can ask it as we go because we want the call to be interactive. Feel free also to use the Q&A functionality. You can see where it says Q&A, and you just type your question and it shows up in our interface. And also feel free to use the chat. So take it away, Marc. Thank you.
Hi, Moshe. Thanks. Yeah. Let's get started, right? So, quick introduction of myself, right? So I have been in SAP area for 20 years, right? So in the software developments, and recently had been focused on Agile and DevOps in IT services. And this session is about Agile and DevOps, right? So, but before we start, we would like to collect some information from your side. So that's why we prepare a poll. Moshe, if you can help us open a poll, right? So basically ask how long is your Agile experiences with your company, and what's the most common Agile frameworks you're using right now, and how big is your development team, right? So can you add your information here, right? So we get to know a little bit more about yourself, yeah.
Great, so the poll is running and I see people starting to vote already. And I also forgot to mention that Marc is an SAP Technology Ambassador. So that's another important thing to know about him.
Yeah, thanks, Moshe.
So we'll give people a couple of more seconds to vote. We still have 4 people that need to vote. Okay, cool. So I'll start Marc reading the results. So how long is your Agile experience? So 27% said less than 1 year, 33% said for 1 to 3 years, more than 3 years, 20%, and we have not started Agile at 20%. Yeah. Then we have what is the most common Agile framework you're using now? So 67% said Scrum, 1 said Kanban, and 4 said we have not used Agile yet. How big is your development organization? So less than 10 people, that's 20% of the people answered. 10 to 100 people, that's 27%. 100 to 1,000 is 33%. And more than 1,000 people is also it's 20%. So those were the results of the poll.
That's good. It seems we're quite well distributed, right? So some of you is doing less with Agile, some of you is doing more than Agile, right? So let's get started, right? So I will start with a short introduction, what Agile Scrum is, and especially for those who has not start Agile Scrum yet. That's the first part. And the second part, we will go through how IT services go through the Agile and Scrum journey, right, in the last couple of years. Yeah. Okay. So when we talk about Agile, right? So Agile is talk about principles, right? So this is the Agile Manifesto. You probably see this many times already, right? So, so in the way as individuals and the interactions over the process and the tools, working software over the comprehensive documentations, customer collaboration over the contract negotiations, and the response to change over following a plan, right? So the usually concept here is we are talking about is not the right side is no longer required, right? So we also talk about the left side is more important than the left side, right? So the left side is more important than the right side, right? So the emphasis is more towards individual teamworks, interactions. They talk about working software rather than comprehensive documentations, and talk about collaboration, talk about response changes, right? So later we'll go to a little bit more why this happens, right? So this is a lot coming back to the human theory here, right? So if you see here, theory X and Y, right? So the assumption is theory X and Y have different attitude towards work, right? So especially look at the new generations, right? Talk about a knowledge worker, right? So that's well fitting into the theory Y here, because the individuals need to work, want to take an interest here, and we can enjoy the work. We can direct ourselves towards accepted target, right? So through on the responsibility here, and motivated by desire and self-developments, and contribute to the company, to the world, to the team. And highly creative, right? So look at how things is evolving environment here. So this is a lot behind why Agile works here, right? So especially look at compared to 50 years or 60 years ago, right? How does work organized? That's why we see more and more the Agile team, Agile organization happening. And the second part is also a lot of things I think see also in the environment is, right? The pace of change is getting faster and faster, right? So if you look at the telephony, right? So reach 50 million users, 75 years. And for the airplane, reach 50 million users in 68 years. But if you look at recently, right? So if you play, I mean, if you're on Twitter, right? So Twitter reached 50 million users in 2 years. And if you play Angry Birds, that's 35 days. If you go to more recent example, if you play Pokemon, that's less than what week, right? Reach 50 million users. So that's also happening in the industry world, right? So look at how many, how fast SAP accumulate the users in the past years. And if we compare to Salesforce or even Workdays, this is getting faster and faster. So that's also require company react faster and faster in the delivery. So what are we looking at here? This is based on McKinsey survey as well, right? So you look at the Agile, and especially you go beyond the team structure, right? So this is really talk about Agile organization as a living organism, right? So go from the hierarchical organization, right? Top-down hierarchical, right? So to go from the individual department silos, looking at to a smaller cell here, right? So talk about box and lines are less important, right? More focus on actions here. So if you look at here, the individual cell here, this is talk about cross-functional team, right? So this is happening not just in IT now, right? So you talk about in the HR area, in the finance area, in the marketing area, we also talk about how do we set up Agile team within the organizations. And the reason why we want to do that is to enable a quick change. There's a flexible resources allocated, right? So the leadership shows directions, enable the actions. You take the execution, daily execution away from the leaders because the team can already manage, apply themselves. And the team is built around end-to-end accountabilities, right? So this is not just a theory, right? So if you look at the company like Spotify, look at even say Google's, right? So there's a lot of teams already running that, other companies moving to the Agile organization. The same for the SAP as well, yeah. So if you go a little bit deeper, right, talk about Agile organization, what does it mean here, right? So how do we plan a strategy? How do we set up structures? How do we manage the process? How to manage people, right? So strategy is more look at North Star, right? So we want to have a shared purpose visions, right? So explain why do we do that, where we want to go, right? So, but the other side, you also have flexible resource allocation, right? So you have actionable goals here as a guidance. And in terms of structure, this is really go from the typical hierarchical organization, right? Talk about network of empower teams. If you familiar with Spotify model, we talk about tribes, we talk about different union, right? So the team is empowered to make decisions, right? So the leader is coming here to support. So you have a clear flat structures, you have a hand-on governance, right? So you have robust communication within the team and across the team. And the process towards rapid decision, learning cycles, right? So I think this is very important because the world is changing, right? The fast we make decisions, we have to make decision fast. We need to learn from our failures fast, right? So that's the decision cycle, learning cycle is, right? So rapid iteration, experiments, right? So it's a standardized way of working, right? So it's performance oriented, right? So we have provide complete transparency, right, of all the information within the organization, with the team. And then there's one important part, agile organization is also learning organization. The learning part need to feedback to the team, from the team or go back to the organization. As an organization learn from your success, from failures, and it can adapt. That's how it can survive in a digital economy. And from people, right? So the trust, the dynamics is important here, right? So comprehensive communities, right? It's a share and a servant leadership. It's not just manager driving the lead. It's the leadership and the responsibility, accountability shared with the team, right? So this is the basics about Agile, right? So we will not go to the details of our different frameworks here, but one thing I want to mention here, Agile is not just about Scrum, right? So that's why you ask, what's the methodology you're using, right? So you typically Scrum and Kanban is two very common Agile approach, but there's many more, right? So especially you're familiar with software developments, right? So there will be extreme programming, that's the other side, right? So TDD, test-driven developments, even user stories is coming from that to help you build an agile environment for delivery, right? Okay. So this is about agile portion. Before I go to Scrum, any question here? Okay, looks good. So now we talk about Scrum, right? So Scrum is the #1 agile frameworks. Now getting very popular in the IT development teams, right? So, but it's also getting very popular in the LB as well, right? So I also hear the finance department running Scrum teams, and HR teams, HR department also running Scrum teams as well, right? So we are focusing on the 3 pillars of Scrum, right? So transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So later we'll go through how do you structure Scrum, right? So what are the events, what are the role in the Scrum, but generally it's always reflecting the pillars, right? So either transparency, inspection, adaptation, or all of them. So we talk about Scrum roles here. So that's how we set up the team here, right? So getting the requirement from the user groups, right? So coming to the product, and in the team itself, there's a product owner who is managing the product ownership, right? Getting requirements, prioritize requirements, assign the product items to the Scrum team, but not deciding which one is executed in the sprint itself. And there's a roles of Scrum Master. Scrum Master basically makes sure the Scrum process is running and the team is following the Scrum frameworks. And you also have a Scrum team here, right? So here is less emphasis of the individual role here. So basically you are development teams here, you are Scrum teams, everyone can contribute. So one of the key one is there's no single accountability, right? So the accountability of delivery is with the team. So everyone is responsible to deliver that. So this is the team structure, right? So, but Scrum also have a way of setting up of the, so the events itself. So you talk about,
Marc, sorry to interrupt you. We have a question by Daniel. So I will.
Okay, so I read out the question, right? So from
Yeah,
Eric,
okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so we have one from Eric, and then we had one from Mark. Just a second. I lost. Can you raise your hand again, whoever raised it? I lost the. Here, 1 second. Sorry. Okay, Daniel. So allowed to talk. Yes, Daniel, please ask your question.
Yep. Hi, Mark.
Hi. Yeah.
I just happened to notice that in the diagram that you are presenting now for Scrum roles, under product owner, there is actually two individuals there, one from the business and one from IT services. Could you maybe put a few more words on that? Because at least from whatever that I know of Scrum is usually that the product owner is from the business and there's only one product owner.
Yep, that's right. So I think if you look at the typical Scrum framework, right? So there's one product owner mentioned, right? So and the product owner is responsible for the overall product backlogs and prioritize the backlogs. And in here situations, and also you talk about adaptation, right? So that's how we adapted to our environment. And the reason why we want to do that, right, is, and I think it could be happening in other organizations as well, because in some of line businesses, we have a challenge here. And the challenge is we have more than one business stakeholders and across the global. And that's what we decide here, because the load of the product owner is way too much for the execution. So we separate the role in as a business product owner and IT product owner here, as you correct point out. And the business product owner is responsible getting the requirements from the business side and pass to the IT product owner. And the other things you can look at IT service product owner as a proxy, because we want to have a product owner which is engaged with the Scrum team on a regular basis. And given the time zone differences here, and it's also kind of like use IT service product owner as a proxy, which is can work with the team on a regular basis, explain the requirements. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, and I believe this is also the question from Eric as well. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
okay.
agree.
Yeah, so in general, it's still one product owner, especially I think you talk about organization is smaller, is in one region. So we adapt this because we are in a global environment, and because the time differences here. Yeah. Okay. And so the other things they talk about Scrum, the artifacts, right? So product backlogs is certainly major change from waterfall project, right? So go away from the project blueprints, right? So we talk about product backlogs. And for the product backlog, usually you can see if you have Excel files, you have Notepad, that will be sufficient, right? So you don't need to get complex about what are the products items you want to deliver. You try to keep it as a minimum sufficient information there, especially those things just first put in the backlogs, right? So we talk about the deep product backlogs, right? Detailed, appropriated. You have estimated, right? Rough estimation of the effort here. You have emergent, right? So emergent in product backlog, keep a regular updated. Prioritize backlog, right? So this is one big part of the work the product owner is doing, right? So there's a prioritization here, right? So from one to, to the lowest one, there's no single item had the same prioritizations. And the items on top typically have more information, because that's the items you'll be likely to deliver in the next springs. But the thing on the top bottoms generally have a less detail, right? Because that's the things you have a less chance to touch that. Sometimes you don't even touch that. So they always kind of estimation here, right? So a rough estimation. So that's why you can plan this for your next sprint. Okay. And in the Scrum, one of the key concept is product increments, right? So in the way you have a sprint usual duration is 2 to 4 weeks, right? So it can be shorter, it can be longer, but no more than 4 weeks. And the increments is the target you want to deliver, right? The increment is the sum of all the product backlog items completed during a sprint, and the value of increments of all the previous sprints here. So in Scrum, one of the things we want to deliver is potentially shippable, right? So in the way, by end of the sprint, your item is already completed, tested, documented, and ready to move to production anytime product owner would like. So the new increments must be done, right? So we talk about done criteria. And the increments is body of inspectable done works, right? So by the development team, also by the product owner, right? So must be the usable conditions, regardless whether of product owner decides to release that, it can be ready. So this is very important, especially look at those popular internet companies, right? They can have thousands, millions release every day. And this part of product increments is very important concept to implement. You must make sure the changes is really already internal quality testing and before product owner release to production. Okay, so we talk about definition done here, right? So definition done is a lot about how good your quality of your delivery is, right? We talk about when we release here, it should be a potential shippable, right? So it should not be a accidental shippable, right? So in the way you already make sure there's a complete test documented before you can call this item is done. Okay, so you talk about sprint planning, right? So sprint planning is one of the key events before the sprint starts, right? So that's the things happening after the refinement meeting, right? So once you have items from the product backlog, product owners, right? So you do product refinements, you define more details about the top items in your backlogs. You come to sprint planning, right? So sprint planning, basically the team need to decide what I want to deliver in the next, say, 2 weeks, if that's a 2-week sprint, right? Typically develop into 2 parts. One part is part one is what, part two is how, right? So part one is the product owner team and the Scrum Master decide. So product owner share what are the backlogs we have, right? So what are the prioritization you have, and based on estimations, the team decide how much item they can take in next sprint. And there's a product sprint planning part 2 as well. That's where the team, Scrum Master, and the product owner as optional, right? So but reachable for questions. And then why product owner is optional? Because part 2 is talk about how do we deliver, right? So each part is time box as 1 hour per week of sprint, right? So what can be done in sprint, right? So select items, create sprint goals. So in terms of short sentences about what do you want to achieve in the sprint, right? So share this with everyone, so everyone knows what do we want to deliver in the next 2 weeks. And the part 2 is how do we choose the work getting being done, right? So development team plan to work to meet the sprint goals. So this can be architecture, this can be collaboration, it can be also collaboration cross different teams as well, right? So it's quite common. You have a part 2 with other teams as well, if there are dependency items cross different teams. And if you look at the execution itself, right? So daily Scrum is one of the daily inspection event, right? So team is required, product owner is optional, Scrum Master is usually present, but it's not must, right? Because the team should be already know how do you run a daily Scrum, right? So the max length is 15 minutes, right? So in the Scrum, usually we talk about the team members less than 10, right? So if it answers 3 questions, what did you do yesterday? What we will do today? And are there any impediments in your way, right? So no detailed discussion, right? So it's more update to the team. What do you want to do? What the problem you have? How can we help each other? So typically you can, I mean, if you follow this, you can finish in 50 minutes. Yeah. So that's very important inspection during the sprint. And in the Spring itself, there's also a product backlog refinements, right? So this is usually happens in the middle of spring. And this is when we have a big items, when we have a new item from product backlog owners, and when we have reprioritized backlogs, and the product owner will be sharing the activities, right? So about the latest product backlogs, and from that, the team will basically try to understand, right? So ask product owner what are the details of product backlogs. They will be working together with product owners to split our items, to combine items, make sure the items has in the suitable sizes. And the team also help the product owner do estimation. So that's a team effort to do the estimations. You can use various approach, teacher size, or kind of like a Fibonacci numbers to do estimations. And the record is the result is recorded in the product backlogs. So that's kind of input for the next sprint planning meetings. So
Marc,
usually, yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. We have a question from Bharat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Bharat, you can unmute yourself and then speak.
Okay, hey Mark. In the daily Scrum, you mentioned about 15 minutes meeting to answer 3 questions. But usually in the SAP world, specifically if we have a greenfield, we have a team size, bigger team size, let's say 100 or more than that. So what is your recommendation managing those daily Scrums when we have a greenfield implementation and bigger teams?
Okay. Did I hear you have a team member more than 100?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
you have 100% in one Scrum team?
I mean, I'm just trying to correlate with the project which we did based on the waterfall model, which was a greenfield implementation. But if we had to do based on this Scrum, how we can manage that? Like you said, daily Scrum can have 10 members.
Okay, I mean, that's a very good question. Later we'll share a little bit more IT transformation here, but it's not really say, I mean, before we move to Scrum, it's quite typical. We have 100 or even say more than 100 people in a waterfall project. And when we transition to Scrum, say Agile mode here, one of the things you want to do is looking at the project you are executing, right? So you create individual product, right? So if you talk about project size of 100 people, you need to look at what are the application the user will be leveraged. Usually that's the areas cover multiple products. So in a way you want to divide the project into, you can call sub-project. I know this is not really a popular name in Agile world, but you can call it sub-product, right? So that's the exactly what we do, right? So we break down those big projects into smaller ones. So that's why now we have 75 product in IT. And in the individual product, you usually have a team size less than 10. So that's how do you do the transformation. So first one, look at a product divided into smaller pieces, end to end, target the user requirements. And from that is structure team appropriate, right? So for a smaller team.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Marc, we have another question in the Q&A by Eric. Can you see it?
Okay. Yeah, I can see that the question is recommendation on the team size and whatever team agrees. So in Scrum, no, right? So if I can guess here, it's normally towards, is it the size of the story? Oh, okay. So that's the size of the user story. Yes, typically that's where we go, right? So if team agree with that, you go with the size of stories. But what we can make sure is at the end of the spring, so during a spring review retrospective, you can come back revisit, right? So it's quite common in a new technology area. So if it's greenfield implementation, if there's a new technologies, the team can estimate it well in terms of effort. So it comes a learning process. But to our question, yes, in the spring planning, if the team agree with the size, we stick to that. Okay. Okay, good. Then let's go to the next slide here. So, the other one is go to the sprint reviews, right? So what will be different, right? So if you ask me what are the key differences in terms of event between waterfall and between Scrum. So in the Scrum execution, we believe this is a learning organization, this learning team. So that's why you have one basically is the product learning. So product learning is a sprint review, right? So summary, you have a do inspection, adaptation related to product increments of the functionality, right? So everyone is welcome here. Team, product owner, Scrum Master, even the users are welcome here, right? So, and here is you have a demo what I deliver in the last, say, 2 weeks time, right? So 2 weeks sprint, and you get immediate feedback from product owner. In a lot of cases, even end user itself, whether the functionality is working for them or not, right? So you get a feedback, it corroborated, you just pull down backlogs. So this is a very major difference compared to waterfall, right? So you think of waterfall 6 months, 1 year. So the only better feedback you get is probably at the end of the delivery cycle when you release to customer, right? Or do UATs. So this is how the Scrums make sure we learn from product perspective. But also the other part is very important here is the team need to adapt as well, right? So I call sprint retrospect is the kind of process improvements on the Scrum, right? So we inspect and adapted the process and environment, right? So team Scrum Master must join, product owner is optional, right? So others can be invited by the Scrum Masters, right? So, but else is not allowed. So basically it's been a team discussion, reflection here, right? So what do we do good? What do we do? What if we find problems? What we don't want to improve here? So this is very much go to self-organizing team, self-inspection here. Right? The team inspects themselves. So identify issues, impact velocity here, identify improvements here, beautiful improvement backlogs, and the team work on the improvement backlogs, right? So there could be some items in the surveys to outside the team. So the Scrum Master will take that to the management, to outside the team here. But the other things is can already manage the team here. So that's the things. If you're new teams, I will suggest you spend sufficient time on that, because this is really build your team trust. This really build your open communication. This is really build your habit of improvement here. So if you execute on a constant basis, you will see the improvements over the time. Yeah. Okay, so in this slide is really we putting together, right? So in terms of Scrum, right? So you look at the role here, right? So we no longer have a project manager, right? In the Scrums, there's no specific mentioning of management, right? In some Scrum teams, they execute without management. In some of our teams, they work well with Scrum management as well. So you have a Scrum Master, you have product owner, you have a team. So this is a key role in the Scrum itself. Then you have a product backlogs. You have product backlogs coming to the sprint planning. You have sprint planning 1 and 2. Then you build a sprint backlogs. So that's the team commit to deliver in the next few weeks. And from the sprint backlog, it creates sprint goals here. And from sprint goal itself, then you come to the execution here, right? So execution is really within daily inspections, right? So if you have issues, tell the team. If you have problems, let the team help you here. So even the product owner will be engaged with the team on a regular basis. If I already completed some items during the sprint itself, you can already show the product owner, get it validate. You don't need to wait for end of the sprint. So you can already adapt for any changes. So from the sprint itself, you build up the product backlogs increments, right? So from the increments itself, you can package, right? So you do the sprint review, and this product owner accept the items based on acceptance criteria. And from that, and you also look at the inspection as well, inspection process. Are we doing well? Are we working well with within our teams? Are we working with other teams here? So this is about talk about typically a one team Scrum, right? So, but if you go to the enterprise level, and it's rare cases, you only have one team, right? So that's we call either call Scrum or Scrum, or what they call scaling Scrum. But generally, it's not much different from what the events looking at here. What it will be happening, it could be say inspection on top, right? So in sprint inspections can be daily or can be every couple of days. So you have a team representative join Scrum or Scrum, right? Inspection between cross team on dependencies on how do we work together. You could have cross team sprint reviews, right? So the team is sharing, or we call bazaar, right? So sharing what is delivered to the product owners and the end users. You can also have a retrospective. So typically this is not replacing the single team retrospective, but if from the single team retrospective, you have cross team feedbacks items, then you can feedback as a Scrum or Scrum. So then that would be a Scrum or Scrum retrospective. So that will be working on cross team effort, right? So at the stage, manager can be also included, help the team address those issues. Okay, so that's a very short introduction of Scrum. So later we adding some standard material from Scrum, Scrum Bibles, Scrum guides, right? So you can find more details about how the Scrum executes. Yeah. Okay, so now we finished the theory part, right? So let's look at how SAP IT did, right? So in short, SAP IT is a global organization, right? So we're a team in multiple locations. You can see the team working on standard product. We adopt SAP product, but we also building product, right? So I think that was kind of like 5-6 years ago, we started Agile journey, right? So what we will talk about here, first thing is the IT services. What's our strategic direction here, right? So even before we do Agile, right? So we have a guiding principle we want to reach. Agile is being one of them, right? But ultimately, our purpose is to enable SAP become the digital enterprise, right? So digital intelligent enterprise with happy end user. So we want to be a user-centric IT. So we adapt principles, right? Cloud first, agility, user-centric, rock solid delivery and operations, and continuous learning, right? So this is how we envision how we run IT organizations. So Agile is methodology helping us getting there. So you look at why do we do that, right? So you look at SAP itself, you look at IT itself, you look at outside SAP. So the world get more and more complexity, right? So there's more things happening, faster happening. There's new technology happening every day, right? So there's a intelligent enterprise we want to build. There's a new concept we want to adapt, right? So one of the key things we want to adapt is like product versus project. And if you look at that, right? So if we look at how IT running, right? So even the SAP deliver software to the customer, we are not running a project. The difference between project and a product have end date, right? So there are certain date I will end a project. I will assume there's no work after that. But if IT going to release item to the user, they will continue using that. There will be ongoing improvements, changes, requirement doing that. So we should adopt a product mindset, right? So we want to ensure that consistent delivery models towards that and support that. So that's a very big reason why we move to Agile running mode, why we build a product, why we build Agile teams. Yeah. Okay. So you talk about digital transformation, right? So what does it mean to IT, right? So from the strategy, we change from efficiency to innovation, right? So we talk about culture to a generative empower culture. People from low cost, right? So towards high skills, right? So getting more and more internal resources. From technology, we look at cloud native, mobile apps, automation. From the user experiences, we talk about mission critical, right? We talk about user-centric. We talk about empathy, right? So from IT philosophy here, right? So we talk about default yes. What does it mean here? If there's user requirement here, we try to meet that, right? Instead of finding reasons in finding the technology barrier for that. From project management, we look at the product iterative, right? So we look at the product ownership. We assumptions if the product is going to continue running for the next 2 years, 5 years, how do we do that? How do we make sure our budget process matching that? And then from business product, business models, we look at how do we engage in business side, from service and support, talk about building relationships, and partner with our businesses for the digital transformation. Talk about Agile Transformation, right? So Agile Transformation is not the only one, right? So we are including that DevOps as well, right? So we talk about we want to do the right project, we want to build the right product, we want to do them right, right? So this is really to the important part coming together. We want to do the right product, we want to do them right. And the 4 key expect benefits: fast time to deliver it, and more end user centric, and higher adaptive, right? So and high quality of delivery. Right, is what we deliver, right? So 2018 we have most releases, right? So we did it much faster, right? So we continue to introduce new technologies, embrace the new products in SAP, embrace the new trend of developments, right? So enable the team doing more automating testings, deliver more in the DevOps ways. So we revised product and portfolio approach, right? So more alignment between businesses, ITs, right? So more feedbacks, quick feedbacks. And we also focus on improving test automation, right? So so you can see the number here, right? So there's 1 of 3 teams achieve 50% of the target UI automation scenario, right? So this is really helping us deliver fast, deliver better. But the other side, we'll be honest here, right? So this is really involving improving journey, right? So we're not the end, right? So it still requires a lot of times for us to improve here. And one is the portfolio and program funding. So this is usually already tricky part, right? In the Agile organizations, especially you are moving to Agile teams, but the budget processes need to follow as well, right? So we are working on that. How do we move away from the usual, let's say, program type of budgeting to Agile product-oriented budgeting? So project to product transitions, right? So one is the setup, we already done, but also talk about mindset, right? So how do we build better product owners? How do we test product? How do we make sure the team have product mindset, right? So usually they have end-to-end responsibility from the delivery to operation. So consistent scaling Agile. So that's things we also explain on that, right? So how do I move across from 1 team, 10 team, 100 teams, right? How do I getting the whole organization's 1,000 developer moving in a single heartbeat? And we increase, right? So the dedicated coaching resources, right? So now I have more than 10 coaches across different regions. People matters, right? So what we haven't talked enough is the mindset. Ultimately, you look at Agile, Scrum framework, it's just a tool helping to ultimate states, right? So we always talk about the mindset itself. How do we collaborate? How do we think about product? How do we address the issue? How do we care about the users? So that's the ultimate goal. If you get a mindset, everything follows. So transformation has been inconsistent, right? So there's some team need more help, right? So we still working on the teams. Scrum and practice need to improve here, right? So one by one. And the other things, the test data, right? So system holistic data, right? So if you're working on SAP systems, especially on the ABAP basis, we still have a challenge on the test data. So that's the thing we're working on that. Things are getting improved here, but I think there's more can be done for the team. And increase team capability, right? So this is talk about one is the self-improvement, self-awareness, right? So how do I improve as Agile Scrum processes? But this is also talk about how do I improve as DevOps, right? How do I doing continuous integrations? How do I do automation tests? So I see there's 2 questions here. Let me open this. Okay, so Erica, about Scrum 4, right? And I know, right? So usually this is talk about
Marc,
yeah.
Sorry for interrupting. Can you just read it out for our audience that will see the watch the recording, read out the
Okay.
question. Thank you.
Okay. So Ari asked a question. Can you speak about I know AINO and Scrum 4? Okay. So this is talk about the team have a Scrum 4, right? So you have an Agile form. So for example, we can see a team's running Scrum event, right? I have say team size of 10. I running Scrum planning. I running daily stand up. I running retrospective. I running product backlogs refinements. But I think running the event, this is one thing, but this is not fitting Scrum. So that's why the mindset is, right? So for example, right? So if you're running a daily Scrum, so in a lot of cases, for the team just starting that, they're running more than 15 minutes. Some of this daily time could be half an hour. And the reason why they do that is because the old habits, right? So I talk about status, I talk about discussion, right? So this is usually, we say you're running Scrum, so you're not following the principles, the methodology in Scrum. So that's what we happen to Sprint retrospect, right? If you look at the Sprint retrospect, no one provide feedbacks, no one talk about improvements. So that's why we talk about you are running Scrum, but you're not executing based on Scrum principles. So when you talk about Scrum 4, this is a little bit different here. Scrum 4 means I run Scrum, but I still follow waterfall in the sense of I could be having 4 sprints. So first sprint I do design, second sprint I do architecture, the third sprint I do development, then last sprint I do testing. So this is really against what we talk about definition of done, right? So definition done is you do the design, architecture, development, and testing in the same sprint. And the reason why I want to do that is because we want to have very short, immediate feedback, right? So we don't want to move unknown items from one sprint to another one. So at the end of sprint, we need to clearly know whether we finish that or not. So that's the explanation for the Scrum 4 here. And the second one is, do you measure customer satisfaction and how? So yes, we do that, and we measure that, I can say, even more frequently. But what do we do that is we do IT survey. So in the way is we ask NPS scores, we ask the team, the customer, how do they satisfy with our product. And I think the other important part, we check follow-up as well, right? So it's ultimately the Scrum team itself will follow up those feedback from the customer surveys and follow up on that. The other thing we just roll out, we're still trying out to get the best result from that. We also have IT survey tools now in every employee's laptop now. So if they use IT product, the tool will detect which product they're using, and from that, the employee can rating and the comments here, and from that we can feedback to the product team. So I think this is a very good question here. This is actually, I see ultimately the feedback we receive here, right? So getting from end users, getting fast feedbacks. Okay. So that's the 2 questions. So coming back to the key survey finding, right? So the other things as Agile coaching teams, right? So we also want to get a regular feedback from the team itself. What do we learn here, right? So I can look at here, not all the number nice, right? So some number is better than others here, right? So it's very talk about engagement scores, talk about innovation thinking here. But what do we need to do here? That's why also we look at the regular feedback loop is roll out the survey apps in the laptop as well. One is the increased feedback loops, right? So we cannot get enough feedbacks from the user, right? So that's how we can adapt our changes of application towards the user. Automation testing, right? So that's the things we are getting better and better, right? So but we are still need to do more. And one of the reasons we are running a very complex landscape here, right? So if you're familiar with SAP technologies, we are still at some product in ABAP, some product in Web UI, some product in the in UI5, some product in Fury, some products we're using Java as well. So it's complex landscapes. We are moving more and more to the automations here. The other things we look at here is, but culture is not changing, right? So 75% is saying innovation idea are welcome, and we already see the result here, right? So where you look at the TechEd, where you look at the Sapphires, there's more and more innovation to come from the IT team, right? So we are doing machine learning, we're doing IoT solutions in different teams. So culture is on the right path, right? So we see improvement opportunities here. So I think this is very big for us, right? So we want to adopt the frameworks, but ultimately goal, we want to change the culture as well. Yeah. Okay. So this is more talk about the product frameworks. I will not go to more detail here, but generally talk about from budget to the execution, right? Especially look at the big organization for us, right? More than 1,000 developers, right? How do we make sure the business capability is aligned? How do we manage it as a product? How do we sustain, right? So how do we plan as a continuous basis effort, right? So how do we create a cross-cutting talent community here, right? So information sharings. How do we make sure there's a governance process here, right? So we are not shy away of governance here, because legal requirements, because enterprise requirement here, we still need a governance here. But how do we make this lightweight? How do we make it self-sufficient? That's the things we're working on. There's a support organization as well, right? Enterprise architecture team, security team, PMO supporting the topics. Design delivery model, right? So you look at what do we change here, right? So we really talk about the traditional ones, right? So talk about individual, you have a DevOps teams, operation team. So we merged the team last year, right? So DevOps and operation are now one team now, right? So the organization itself holding both DevOps and development and operation responsibility, right? So the product owner, the developers, the system operation here specifically working together to deliver, right? So whether from Spring 0 to 1, from central source management to deliver research here, right? So this is really bring accountability, responsibility together. Strategy. So looking forward, right? So how do we scale in 2019, right? So one is going from align to integrate to value generation, right? So strategy is align the organization, wider product, right? Scale agile frameworks, right? So create more effective communication across different team, different department, right? So avoid silos. Create, integrate, generative, right? So learning teams, wide empowerments, mindset shift, and focus the teams create the most valuable works for the SAP, right? So increase happiness, right? So ultimately, how do we measure our success? Is happiness with the customer, happiness with the employee, right? So connection to works, why culture? So tactics, right? So if you're familiar with scale agile frameworks, so there's multiple frameworks here. So we are looking at less, right, large scale frameworks to see how do we adapt, right? So in one organization, so improve portfolio process, right? So we still need someone seeing how the overall development is, but it's really talk about how we easy the portfolio process, how do we easy the team get the requirements.
Marc,
yeah.
Sorry for interrupting, just heads up, we have 5 more minutes and we have a question from Daniel.
Okay, so let's, I will quickly go through that. Then give me 3 minutes, then we go to the question from Daniel.
Perfect.
Okay, so I mean, the key idea here, I think, is really talk about the value generation. Right? So we go away from contract negotiation. We partner with business side, talk about value generation. So the employees, the customer, the management are partners at the value generation. Okay. In fact, yeah, that's the last slide. We can go to questions. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So Daniel, you can speak now. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi Marc. Again.
Hi.
My question, I think, relates to a bit of a personal experience in the Agile journey. I think when we, at least in my company, when we embark on an Agile journey for SAP people. We were a mix of kind of like more functional people and more technical people. So I think there were a bit of challenges looking at forming up cross-functional teams. Were there any similar challenges in your journey over at SAP IT? And how do you overcome these challenges if you had something similar?
Okay, can you spend more like what kind of challenges you facing during when you create a cross-functional team?
I think it's more of some of us were more towards functional consultants kind of skill sets. So we were more familiar with how configuration set up, for example, and some were more technical, for example, about experts. And we created the products, based on what, again, the services we provided to the business. But it meant that we were together in a team with some people didn't have that much programming skills, and so there was kind of like so we weren't truly cross-functional because we definitely couldn't just take the task that each other could do.
When you start, right? So that's a good point here. I mean, this is something I will not say we don't have, right? So we have a similar issues. I didn't even talk about technical people, right? So you look at the SAP landscape, you have UI5 developer, you have ABAP developer. In some cases, you have a kind of a machine learning developer as well. So that's the things I think when I talk about cross-functional teams, I think one of the things ideas bring the expert in, right? So you have functional people, you have technical people here. One of the benefit you can already see if the team is talking to each other on a regular basis, like in the Scrum, say Spring planning meetings, in the Spring retrospectives, they already can openly share the experiences here, right? So I think this is already help the teams deliver better quality product because combined expertise that is already helping. We are getting the product in say better shape. So this is I would say the starting point here. From the other side, the cross-functional team is also talk about crossing skills as well, right? So and then why do we crossing skills? Because you even look at here, talk about 6 to 10 people is still a small team here, right? So what we always say is the product owner will not assign a task to you, right, based on skill set, right? So I will not say you have 2 functional teams, I give 2 functional items. You have 8 technical people, I will give 80 people here. So this is at the beginning, it will definitely a challenge here, right? So, but let's also actually opportunity for team to learn, right? So in the cases, I think it's very much is related to how the team address this issue, right? So if let's say I in current sprint I only have 10 technical items, right? So the 2 functional people cannot be expert in the technical items in one sprint, right? But I think this is really talk about mindset, talk about eager to learn, right? So in the way is Scrum Agile encourage people learning skills. So in the sense of the functional people can also work in the technical items, maybe not individually at the beginning. They can do a pair programming, they can work with a senior technical person here. But gradually, the functional people, even they will not be a technical experts, they will learn a little more on technical side. The technical people will learn about a functional side. So this is a create one is empathy, right? So I know the challenge, what are you dealing with team here, but also create resilience in the team here, right? Because if you really we have a major item coming, everyone can contribute.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Marc. I think we're at the top of the hour. Do we have any further questions? Any additional questions for Marc? So I want to thank again SAP Technology Ambassador Marc Gong for this great presentation. This recording will be available in the SAP community calls page that I shared in the chat. And I invite you all to join us for future SAP community calls. Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.